couple of decades ago, American car maker Saturn launched a car advertisement which depicted the excess of space that was occupied on road by cars by only showing the drivers and the odd occupant on the road, seated much like they would be in a car, except with no car in sight. The ad depicted, much to the now defunct Saturn's detriment, the simple fact that our cars had officially outsized our needs. And that's where this little fellow comes in. It's called the MG Comet, and it's here to relieve you of the stress of driving through intense bumper-to-bumper traffic. At the moment, it's the most compact vehicle sold in the country. It's actually taller than it is wide and has a wheelbase that's under 2 meters long. MG Motors India is very clear that this isn't a rival to the Tata Tiago EV and that the Comet isn't batting for the most affordable EV in the country tag, even though that's exactly what it is. According to them, what it is an alternative lifestyle solution for those looking for a convenient urban runabout that's easy to park, easy to drive, and very easy to own. That's kind of how the brand is positioning this car. It's not designed to be your one car, the one EV that you own and take across states, because it's very much a city car. The Comet gets a 17.3 kilowatt-hour battery with 40 bhp of power and 110 newton meters of torque, along with a claimed range of 230 kilometers that in the real world would be roughly under 180 kilometers. But the idea isn't a long-range vehicle. What you're looking at is essentially the spiritual successor to the Reva. The Reva, of course, was not considered a major sales success, but it did leave a pretty strong impact both culturally and in terms of what an EV could do, both in India and international markets. And speaking of international markets, European markets are absolutely chock full of compact cars and EVs like these. The interiors are an exercise in minimalism, often going in an extreme direction. For instance, there's no start button. You turn the power on by long pressing the brake, and you can turn off the car by either touching a button below the steering column or putting the car in neutral, stepping out, and then locking it. Still, it does feel larger on the inside than it does on the outside, and that's going to hold it in good stead regardless of the niche it's trying to carve out. Alright, so just to demonstrate how easy it is to accommodate 4 people in this car, we actually happen to have 2 of our producers and our camera person here. So I'm just going to show you that it is actually pretty easy to just hop in, and that even a car this size can accommodate 4 average sized adults. Alright, so we now have 4 full-sized adults sitting in this car. I'm just going to take a little poll. How's everyone doing? Is everyone comfortable?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, great. So we have that out of the way. But what if you're out in town and you happen to pass by an IKEA or, some kind of flash sale? I know MG has positioned this as a car that's strictly designed to be operated within the city. And so you're not going to require, putting the kind of luggage that you require for interstate travel. But even so, in the city, you're going to occasionally shop, and that's where you get a bit of a problem. There really isn't much in terms of storage space. So if you're traveling with 4 people, what is the solution? There is a definite trade-off in case you want shopping loot or a passenger. And just remember, friends are easy to come by, but a really good flash sale, not so much. Which leaves us with the all-important question, how is the Comet to drive? Well, look, this isn't really a car that's designed to scorch the tarmac or designed to be a corner carver. This is really an aluminium box with an electric battery inside, and some infotainment features. And it's a very compact aluminium box with a great, nice view of the city. You're seated relatively high up, and that's essentially what this car is all about. 17.3 kilowatt hour battery for a car weighing under a ton is actually more than sufficient. In fact, it allows it to have a claimed range of 230 kilometers, and even with a real world figure accounted for, you should have easily over 150 kilometers. This whole unit is a little short on buttons, so you've got this one here. Currently I'm in normal, and a quick press and you're in sport. At no point have I found it underpowered. At no point have I found it to be a little lacking and I'm not able to overtake at a point where I absolutely need to. So you don't really feel unsafe or, unnecessarily held back by its modest power figure. That said, I don't think there's a pronounced difference between these power modes. I mean, I go into eco mode and yes, you can feel the power delivery is slightly curtailed, but not in really any way that affects the overall driving. There are also 3 regen modes, which I should mention aren't as effective as the one found on the Tiago EV. According to MG, it should have sufficed for single pedal driving, and right now I've kept the regen level at light, which means regen braking is at its lowest. So naturally, when I take my foot off the throttle, there's some amount of braking, but not what I'd call single pedal braking. The good news, however, is that you don't really have to squeeze the brakes too hard. This is a fairly light vehicle, so it comes to a standstill fairly quickly. And so yes, the regen modes are okay. I've taken my foot off the throttle now, and if you do it early enough, then yes, you can get single pedal driving. Its tiny footprint does make it easy to maneuver, but the maneuverability does come at a cost, which tends to happen when a car is taller than it is wide. If there is one niggle I have, it's that there is some amount of body roll. You're seated fairly high up. In fact, the driving position isn't too different from what you would find in a crossover. But throw it around a corner and you do feel precariously placed. I'm not saying you feel like you'll topple, although at high enough speeds, it's not really confidence inspiring. It's not designed to be driven around high speeds, but even right now, around a proper roundabout, which is a death trap in Delhi to begin with, it can be a little unnerving. When you are driving, you do kind of feel the weight transfer from side to side every now and then, and it's not the most confidence inspiring. Another really annoying factor is that you don't even have a glove box. I mean, the documents for this car are actually in the pocket behind the front seat, and that's really a very baseless limitation because, how much does it cost to just add a little cavity here? It's not like the space up front is occupied by, something else. You just have your basic auxiliary battery and, a few other electrical functions. But other than that, it looks like they've skimped on a couple of features, which the price point it's going for, they can afford to put those things in there. Limit it to an inner city commute, drive it under speeds of about 60 kilometers per hour, and the Comet provides a rewarding driving experience. When not looking at it from a purely utilitarian lens, it's a fairly compelling addition to the EV space and a quirky, if not downright thrilling, point-and-shoot city car unlike anything in the market. Now, the Reva died a premature death because, honestly, cost economics were not in its favor. Of course, it was a really long time ago, battery costs were much higher, and the overall cost of acquisition for an EV was significantly higher than it is today. This doesn't have any of those issues, and therefore it's unlikely to meet the fate of the Reva. That said, this car is still going to occupy a very small niche in the market, primarily because its utilitarian value isn't as high as some of the cars, including EVs, that are in the market, which are going to be batting around the same price range. The real USP of this car is sheer ownership convenience. It's easy to maintain, it's pretty zippy in the city, it's extremely compact, so you can park it anywhere, you can maneuver through incredibly dense traffic as easily as you can with a four-wheeler. And it's got a pretty nifty infotainment system which matches those of more expensive vehicles, and that pretty much is the only thing going for it. Now, I personally have always liked the idea of a really small city runabout, because when you get into dense traffic, all you really want to do is get out of it. Even when you go into narrow roads, all you really want to do is get out of that situation as early as possible, and that at the moment serves as the greatest form of luxury. It doesn't really matter what size of vehicle you're sitting in, because as long as you're sitting in traffic, it's really not a lot of fun. But will I put my money down on a car like this if it was my first car? Absolutely not. I would want as much versatility from that car. Therefore, it's unlikely to even be an EV. It's most likely going to be an internal combustion car that I can take across the state. Is this then going to be my second car? Possibly not, because once again, even if I'm going for an EV, I'd rather go for something that offers a little more space, a little more utility, because the sheer novelty and fashionability of this vehicle is, at least for me, not enough to really justify a purchase. And I suspect that'll be the case with a lot of other people too. Where this will really come in is the way MG is positioning it as an alternative lifestyle sort of a vehicle for those very few households which are lucrative enough to afford a third vehicle, or in certain cases where they want their children or people in their 20s to have one car just in the city that's designed for sheer convenience. I mean, MG has even gone so far as to tell me that some people would prefer this car to be driven by their chauffeurs or staff at home in order to just serve as a milk and eggs runabout, and that's a very, very tiny number. Now, I do like the idea of such cars because, again, coming back to that Saturn advertisement, there is far too much metal on the road, occupying far too much space and featuring far too many people inside. And at the rate at which car ownership is increasing, we could certainly use few more sensible purchases that occupy a smaller footprint on the road and just make everyone's lives just a little bit easier, because at the rate at which SUVs are taking off in the market, we really don't have the cities or the infrastructure to accommodate them and their sheer size. So for the sake of sensibility, I do hope to see more of cars like the MG Comet in the market and a bit more of the MG Comet on the streets.